Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For What It's Nerd. Today, we are going to discuss Clayface, the new movie that's coming out this year, October time, I believe, for DC, of course. And very excited about this, actually. So, I'm not a horror person. I think I've said this before. I'm not huge on horror, mainly because I find that horror so often falls into the same tropes of being sort of, the ghost of an older woman or a woman or a child that is haunting a house. And you find out that there's been some brutality in their past that has caused this, they were killed there or something like that. And it's very much the same old story redone. And if it's not one of those, it's the opposite. It's something that's like it's like kind of slasher, kind of like there's no kind of real story. It's grotesque and it's got loads of jump scares to try and like frighten you. Basically, what I'm saying is the horror genre, and this is not just about movies as well. The horror genre across most media is one of the most superficial modes of storytelling, in my opinion. It's about the gimmick. It's about the grotesquities. It's about the jump factor, the scare factor, rather than like let's give something to someone to think about. It doesn't feel like very often we get a movie from the horror genre. I'm not saying all of them. There's definitely like ones that are much higher elevated, that sort of in the midline. That's not that. That's not about trying to just make you shit yourself or otherwise reinventing a concept that's already been done. And that's why I don't like zombies as much either. Zombies, whilst falling on the other side of horror, that is horror elements, but not necessarily horror itself always, is not also in my wheelhouse because it feels very much the same all the time. It feels like zombies are so very overdone because they just go for the world's ending, zombie apocalypse, like yada, yada, yada. So not really using my genre. So today, I'm going to tell you why I'm really excited about Clayface, which is a horror movie, but so clearly from the off is about more than just that. This is about delving into someone's psyche, seeing someone devolve into something other than themselves, someone losing their humanity and becoming sort of going from one of the high highs of society, so to speak, in regards to being an actor, to the lower lows of being essentially a criminal, and whatever else that might include along the way. And that's a really interesting concept for any movie, but the horror genre allows you to go even further, especially with the idea that what Clayface is. Clayface is someone who, it depends on obviously the version, but in certain versions is does this willingly to kind of push himself further into stardom, and it doesn't work because he wants to make himself look better. And then in other versions, obviously, this one it looks like it's going to be regards an attack. He's being sort of forced through this change. So the tragedy element is a lot more strong in this one. And I'm really excited to see that play out. I'm really excited to see where that goes. You know, there's a scene in the trailer for Clayface where you see, I think it's Matt Hagen, this one that they're using, and you see Matt like kind of rub his hand across his face, and I think that's probably going to be the thumbnail of the video, so you've probably already seen it. And his face basically disappears, whether or not that's intentional or not. He's melting in the bathtub essentially at this point, and so it's the visual identity of this film is so strong from the off, because as well the fact that it's Clay, it's like Clay is this thing that we make so many nice things from, so many amazing things from, but Clay is unwieldy and kind of ugly unto itself, right? So it's this thing of like, you could have been beautiful, or you could be beautiful, but the underneath the clay is there. The rough kind of nasty raw material is you. You are Clayface. Your face is like, so I think that's a really obviously that's going very deep on a literature analytical level, but that's what I would want this movie to be. I want this movie to sit and think about these concepts of being less than and feeling like you aren't able to achieve what you want, and because you are fundamentally different to the people around you, and you can't even keep yourself together in a way. So I think that's what this movie is going to do so well. And I think what's even better is, and we know that the superhero genre has always messed about with different genres within that, if you know what I mean. It's very similar to Star Wars in that Star Wars, some franchises become so big as they're be able to just span. They're not just sci-fi and they're not just superhero, but they then have sci-fi romance. They have sci-fi action. They have sci-fi heist film. Now, a lot of those bigger franchises don't venture into horror because they don't really have the balls to do it. And let's just be honest. Let's just be completely real about that. A very like people have wanted a Star Wars horror movie for years. People would love that. They're finally doing a horror novel, by the way. Check that out. I thought it was. I genuinely thought the cover of it was like a Nintendo, like a Nintendo Switch game. I genuinely was like, they've announced a new Star Wars game because the cover. Anyway, look that up. That's quite funny actually. It's got Vader on the front and two looks like young adults. Anyway, going back to Clayface. Obviously, superheroes never really done that. Marvel has been very good at trying different genres, trying a little bit more of a comedic approach, trying the heist approach, trying other different approaches, but they've never done horror. They've tried so many different mediums, and that's like one of the big ones that they've never even began to capitalize on. And there's so many different, characters there that you could do that with. But here we've got DCU, the DCU under James Gunn, going in on the first kind of run, really, if you think about it, because we've only had Creature Commandos, Superman, Supergirl's coming out, and then Clayface is coming out. So it's still the third film. It's going to be the third film, and they're doing a horror. And people are saying, how is that going to fit in? How does that feel right with everything else? Well, does it? Does it have to? The whole point of the DCU was to be a little bit more expansive in terms of what they were trying to do than just sticking to a similar theme. People have complained on numerous occasions that the MCU has stayed too close to its lane. Like there's MCU humor. That is something that people talk about very regularly. There's MCU tropes that people talk about. There's the one and done with the villains, which the DCU has already done away with on numerous in the numerous projects that they've done already. So like that, the numerous projects I said, the Peacemaker and obviously Peacemaker, of course, I totally forgot about Peacemaker, but Peacemaker and Creature Commandos and Superman. So a few. And so I'm thinking really James Gunn is trying to do everything that people were criticizing and kind of wanting the MCU to do, giving kind of more gritty, darker projects, and that suits DC as well. Let's not beat around the bush. Marvel has always been the sort of brighter, more hopeful franchise, and DC, whilst not obviously immune to the campiness or the brightness or the hopefulness, it has been grittier and darker because of characters like Superman and characters like Batman and stuff like that. So Gotham, of course, is the perfect setting for that, and I think there's always that debate of who would break first. Would Batman struggle more in like if you were to reverse it, would Batman struggle more in Metropolis or would Superman struggle more in Gotham? And I think the answer is, funnily enough, Superman would struggle more in Gotham because the absolute abject terror that Gotham is, it's the morale aspect. It's the lack of ability to control the public regards their nefariousness, their warpedness in Gotham. It seems there's always someone else with some other problem or some other how do I put it? Some other it more than not mental illness. If we're being completely honest, Gotham is a dark place and very distinct to Metropolis, where yes, they have world-ending threats, but it's always in that tinged hope style. It's always in these guys are definitively evil, typically aliens from another planet. They are not a reflection of our own psyche and our own struggles in the world and our own inequalities and our own exploitation as people. So that's what Gotham is, and I think that's why this is going to be such a great film. I think Clayface is going to be so interesting to watch, and I never go to the cinema to watch horrors, but I will be going to watch this, and I actually really do hope. I hope they don't go halfway. I hope it's horror. Like, if it's not, then what's the point in doing it? Like, if I'm not in there shitting myself, then I might as well not do it. And that's counter to what I said before. It is, but if the story's there, then you're allowed those cheap thrills, if that makes sense. If it's a good story, you're allowed to scare someone shitless. If it's a great story, you're allowed to do a little bit of the kind of the tropiness. But the great story has to come first, because horror movies are not they haven't elevated. They're very samey. And so if this elevates, great, perfect. I'll be there. I'll be excited. So that's my take on Clayface. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little thought process from me. Let me know what you guys think. As always, those watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Those listening elsewhere, thank you for listening. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.